Hey, everybody, welcome to All About the Game. My name is Todd Blyleven, joined by my co-host Dave Majeski, and we have an awesome special guest, my boss, and good friend Steve Goody, CEO of Pocket Radar. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thanks, Todd. I'm glad to be here. You've been telling me about this for a long time. It sounds like a really fun time. So I thought it'd be great to jump in here with you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I'm really excited about this show, Dave, because Steve and I have had conversations for over a couple of years now, almost 2 years, I guess. I met Steve when I was with Baseball Factory, and Pocket Radar is partnered with Baseball Factory, and so I met him up in Chicago personally. We've been talking on the phone, and one of their missions was really to try to come in and educate coaches on proper usage of radar, and then also to spread the brand awareness of the Pocket Radar device, which has been growing over the last 10 years. And I know with my background working for Skills and the old bullet ball that you used to throw and play catch with, in the Little League days, man, it's just evolved. So being call me a nerd of today's sensors and technology and sports. I just really fell in love with our conversations, and so led me into getting a job with Pocket Radar and getting a chance to work with Steve. We were working almost daily there for a while, and so now it's every few days during the week. But Steve, I wanted to dive into you a little bit because you've got a really interesting background. And one of the coolest things I've said this to you in working with Pocket Radar is the employees there that have the three founders that started the company, but also all the rich backgrounds, not only in sports, but technology and just different facets. And everybody brings a really unique game to the whole team. So can you kind of give us like your background and where you started in technology, and then what led you to start Pocket Radar?
Yeah, I'd be glad to do that. Our story is a little bit odd because we're a sports technology company is one of the main things we do, although we do other businesses as well. So people make it a big assumption that we must be all sports nerds, right? We love sports, played baseball growing up, and thought there'd be need to do these cool products for sports. And actually, it was sort of completely reverse of that. We were the nerdy guys that couldn't play sports, so we went and hit our electronics kits and built little gadgets and stuff like that. And the three founders, myself, Chris, and Grant, we have that in common. And it's sort of ended up backwards, coming back to this technology and radar. But it's been a really fun adventure, and our backgrounds were in building things and engineering. My personal background is, started out of college engineering, electrical engineer, worked for Hewlett Packard for a bunch of years, then did about a decade of startup companies, some of which I founded. Took some time off, and then pondered, well, what can I do that would take all the good parts of what I love to do about creating things and building, and do a company that would keep all the good stuff and let all the bad stuff go. And that was sort of the loose philosophy of why the three of us met each other. One of my partners, Grant, had been through the decade of startups with me and saw that side of the coin. And my other partner, Chris, had spent his career at Hewlett Packard in every level of the company possible. A great business guy. He had a familiarity with radar. For those of you who don't know this, Hewlett Packard makes instruments that engineers use to build stuff. And they worked in the part of HP that builds those instruments. So we had a leg up because they were building instruments that the aerospace industry and the military was using to build the most advanced, equipment on planet Earth in terms of radar and all kinds of other tech. So they're sort of the top of the pyramid, because if you're using their guild stuff to build, then you know something about that technology. And so my partner Chris especially had even repaired radar as a young guy out of high school, working for a TV repair shop, repaired some police radars. So, when we did this company, we weren't really intending to start a company. We were just sort of an engineer's sandbox. And, one thing led to another. We were considering hundreds of ideas, from toys to gadgets, and just tinkering. And then we said, well, maybe if we built something and sold it, we can tinker longer with a little more money and resources. So maybe it was like a means to an end in the beginning. And it wasn't to make a pile of money. It wasn't to do a particular company. We'd already been through a lot of that. So so sort of a different point of view. And I really believe that's one of the reasons the company is sort of unique, as Todd was referring to, and that the people that we, have joined us, we really make it clear when they come on board that this isn't, one of those other adventures. This is a particularly new kind of adventure where, we'd love you to be here if you love doing what you're doing. This isn't here to like be a big corporation or to, cash out on a big IPO or something like that. This is about building cool stuff to help people, and this is a long play, not the short term, make it and flip it kind of thing. So pretty different philosophy, but it resulted in a great place to work. I think most people, really are enjoying it and finding it is unique. The radar gun, a little funny side story is that my partner Chris had some friends that his boys were in Little League, and they had seen one of those police trailers down the street that had the speed of your car, drive by to keep you slowing down. And they figured out somewhere along the way, if they threw their baseball in front of that thing, they can measure the speed of their throws. And so they would go out to that trailer and throw the ball to see what, I think they were like 10, 12. And, and so they'd go out and do that. And Chris remembered that. One thing led to another. We looked at the radar guns that were out there in the world, this, big honking, 3-pound boat anchor radar guns that every scout was carrying, every top coach had. Yep, Todd knows this, did it for years. And so that was a rarefied piece of equipment that only the people that had, a couple grand, could afford, like MLB teams or big schools, academies, maybe here and there. So, we said, well, no one's redesigned that thing for about 50 years, because it's sort of an ignored area. And we thought, well, what if we could, think of those baseball kids, right? What if we could redesign it so it was like everybody could get one, fit in your pocket, be super as accurate or more accurate than the big ones, which it is, and and super rugged and usable. And that was sort of the the beginning of the idea of how to do this. And then quite a few years went by trying to pull that off, because it turned out it was really, really hard. So we almost gave up halfway through, and we got a few patents out of pushing through that pinch point of how to do it in a different way to allow it to fit in your pocket and run off little AAA batteries. And but yeah, it's been fun.
So an incredible journey, and it's really interesting to hear. I've just learned something new too, that I didn't know about the three of you guys. And Dave, Chris Stewart, one of the other founders, is I go into boardroom meetings, with these guys, and I just want to like sit in the back corner and just listen to them talk, because it's so educated on why and how radar is built, the advancements, that it's had over the years. I mean, I'm coming from a product company years ago that literally just made a toy out of it. And then stepping into, the scouting realm as well, coming from that world where, I used to just think I'd be able to take my radar gun out and point it at the field, and I could literally just put it on a stand and I'm good. Whatever ball's being thrown, I can capture, and it's certainly not the case. So we'll get into that later. But Dave, I wanted to ask you, with your background in coaching, you started in Florida as a high school coach and led into a lot of different colleges. And when was the first time as a coach that you were introduced to radar? And when did you start to realize, hey, I can use this as a tracking tool, or how did you use it?
Yeah, I guess being a high school coach, trying to promote my players, whenever I would call a college coach or call a minor league scout, they would trust my opinion. They would trust my eye and my experience. But the first question always came, what's his numbers? What's he shooting? What's he got on the gun? And, there were different companies and different products. It was rumored that one gun would register faster than the other. And as we're about to discuss, depending on how you implemented it and used it and the education you had on how the actual readout was going to come, to the layman, a number was a number. If it's a gun, wow, whatever it read, that's what I was believing. I was putting my faith into that. And Steve, to go back to your police story, I remember being 10 and going to this all-star event, and they actually drove a police car onto the field behind the pitcher's mound. And that's how you got your own, at 12 years old, throwing 48 miles an hour or something. I'm not even sure it registered. The guy was probably making it up just to make me feel good. But how did I first come about this, Todd? It was realizing that there was a need, that it was requested from these scouts, from these college coaches. It was something that they could document. It wasn't just my friend Dave said, this pitcher's good. It was, here's some concrete numbers. Here's some things I can take to my boss. Here's some ways I can label and chart and follow the kid's progress and his development. So it was a long time ago. I've been coaching for a while, but yeah, all of a sudden it was, okay, my opinion might matter, but people are going to want the hard facts, the hard concrete readouts of a radar gun.
Well, and now,
oh, sorry, I'm curious real quick, Dave, when was the first time your team actually had a gun where it was yours and you had one of your own?
Truthfully, I remember borrowing one because high school budgets, they're not very, very lucrative. You're not going to have money to drop on $1,000 radar gun.
Right.
When did I have my first one? I'm not sure I ever had one. I have 2 pocket radars. I got them right over there.
That was the idea.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, and that's, you look at the evolution of the radar gun, and it's not to take the show and make it a pocket radar, infomercial, because that's not what we're doing here. But we're really just, we've got some experts here. We're talking about the game itself and how radar was introduced to it, and in terms of the modern day times, now I'm watching a game the other night. I won't say who it is, but it was an MLB game, and they're showing the raw arm velocity, metrics from each of the outfielders. And then they spit out, that 87.6 mile an hour is the raw arm velocity out of major league players. And so it shows, years ago when my dad was an announcer, and I remember him and I sitting at an In-N-Out in Southern California after a big Fox, TV producer show or whatever they were doing. And he said, can you believe that they want to write, on the teleprompter, they want to start putting analytics and launch angles and velocity readings and all these things. And he said, so he had to learn how to do all that stuff. But now you look, every swing, every pitch, there's some sort of spin rate or velocity movement or something else. I think it's too confusing to today's common fan at times, but baseball is really leading the charge in sports, which has helped in other industries start to learn how to use radar as a development tool. And I want to pass this over to Steve, but I take my son out to the field the other day, and some colleges are wanting some fielding footage from Dylan at third base and at first. And so, I'm capturing some video things and stuff, and we get the radar out and start showing some raw arm because it's important. But last year or 2 years ago, or even 3 years ago, I would have never thought about, having to put that in a recruiting world. So Steve, you work with, thousands of college coaches. It's been your mission over the last 10 years to really get ingrained and embedded, and you've built the trust of the college programs. What has that been like? Have you had a lot of hiccups? What's been the adoption like with college coaches?
Yeah, that was a fun adventure because, in entrepreneurship, you're always surprised at every turn, and this is no different. So, I'll remember the story with Andy Coach Lopez, out of Arizona when he hadn't retired. And so, about a decade ago, maybe a little more now, we took the first model. We have 3 models of sports guns now and a lot of other models, but we took the first one that worked for baseball, and that was the main market. And I had a friend through, Lou Pavlovich, the guy that runs Collegiate Baseball News. So I got to go to Lou because we were working with getting some stuff in his publication. Great guy, and he knew Andy personally, and they're both in Arizona. So he goes, well, I know Andy. Why don't I call him up and maybe you can walk on the field to one of his practices someday, when it's right, and just show him what you got, see what you, we're looking for feedback from the market. I've never been in front of a high level baseball coach in my life. And so, here's a guy that was a college World Series winner, knew what he was doing. And so I walked onto the field, and he was a great guy, just an awesome man. And so, I had this little tiny 4-ounce radar gun that looked like, a deck of cards, not much bigger than a deck of cards, and it weighs 4.5 ounces. And, he's got his, I think he had soccer guns, the big, normal, typical gray box shaped soccer guns that were really popular back then. And, you know, and he let me, he had some guys throwing some bullpens or something, and he's like, well, let me show you how this works. So my favorite demo is the one I did with him, which is held this little tiny thing right next to his stalker, and every number is just like boom, 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 matching. And he just looks at me and he's like, you got to be kidding me, or some other word that probably has maybe some expletives in it. But that was usually the reaction, is this shock that this little thing could be as accurate as this $1,000+ radar gun. And and that's a great demo. So at that point, this is where I made the big mistake that all entrepreneurs make. I thought, well, okay, Andy loves it. He's like, I'll get 6 of these things when they're ready or whatever. And it's also when I learned more about I didn't know anything about coaching baseball, and I'd like, so Andy, you're gonna would you use these to to measure the speed of the fastballs of your bullpen? He just laughs at me. He goes, no. He goes, I know what they all throw. He goes, no, I use my radar here to dial in off-speed pitches. I want all my guys to be like, I think he said 9 miles an hour under their personal fastball velocities for the maximum deception, highest strikeout rates. He's like throwing all this data at me. I'm like, wow, so this is about control. He goes, yeah. He goes, if I use radar guns, these guys can get within a mile per hour of that desired number. If I don't use the radar, they're 2, 3, 4 miles an hour in that range, and they get some hits off of them. And this is where that was one of my first sort of learning points from a coach about how to use measurements for something other than just the raw speed. And I'm like, wow, so this is about control and about mastering pitches and all this other stuff that I had no idea. Then I made the big mistake. I walked off that field, happy as heck. We hadn't even, I think we just had the product on the market for a month, or, it was just barely on the market. I thought, well, every baseball coach in the world is going to buy one now. That was $199 was our product, and that was the cost of it. And everybody's going to buy one. Look what Andy said, right? And I thought it would just like it within a year, we'll sell radar guns to every baseball coach in the United States and every player and all over the world. We'll be rocking and rolling in a few years and hire more people. And basically we scratched and clawed for 5 or 6 years to actually get any material volume at all, because that's where I learned that having a great product doesn't mean you're going to sell that product, because you have to tell people about it. And even more so, a real shock was our radar gun did not look like our radar gun. It was too weird, and it was too good to be true. And how could this thing that costs $200 match a $1,200 stalker gun? You know what I mean? There's just no way. In fact, there were companies not named here that actually took out ad campaigns that said, don't be fooled by a toy radar gun, buy the real deal. And they were just trying to smash us, putting out false videos eventually where they were using the gun wrong and saying, see, numbers garbage. It was really bad. And we don't play that way. And so it was just scratching and clawing, but after about 5 years, people organically started to, talk about it, because people that had them, which would show them to their buddies who had stalkers, and it would match. And then after a while, it's like, well, it seems to be working. And pretty soon the stalker guns and the jugs guns and the other guns started being put away, and the other guns started being used, and just by word of mouth organically. 5 years later, MLB teams all started using them, and then next thing you know, the word had just spread that it works and it's accurate. And so on its own, we couldn't afford big budget advertising, to go at a $200 product, you can't spend a lot of money on advertising, and so it was word of mouth. We seeded a lot of product, made partners like Baseball Factory, and just gave product and equipment to a lot of showcasing companies, a lot of tournament companies, a lot of coaches, found all the championship coaches, gave them all guns, just put them into the world. And eventually, now, thank goodness, for the last 5, 6 years, our gun is absolutely trusted, that and they know that our velocities are measured on our guns, and we're actually certified in police laboratories because we sell law enforcement product too. And because of that, we actually have a higher standard than just sports guns do. So we're actually more accurate than most guns on the market. So But
Yeah.
radar in general is just a great tool, and the point was to democratize this tool and to get it into everybody's hands that could benefit from it. And that was the real mission, is to help more people, get it into the world. And now, I think we've done that. I think now it's trusted and people can use it, and more importantly, analytics, like Todd said, is becoming something that's understood, and how valuable that is. So now everybody can benefit, even down to little guys playing little league. I have stories we can talk to you about later about how even guys that are coaching 8-year-olds have used it for morale building and other things you wouldn't expect. They're not worried about their arms, speed and how fast they're going to pitch. In fact, you shouldn't do that with them. They're going to hurt themselves trying to outdo each other. But other value things like morale, confidence, hitting against the machine that is throwing as fast as that big giant pitcher that's going to throw against you in the championship when you're 8, and knowing that you can hit off of them makes a huge difference. There's a great story about a championship little league team that I worked with where they used that to make their kids confident, and they won because of the confidence.
That's one of the things we try to do here is we try to talk about, what the parent goes through, what the coach goes through, what the athlete goes through, and then eventually kind of what that maybe organization. And in this case, when you really look at how radar has impacted all those pieces, whether it's a dinner table conversation with mom and dad and the kid, whether it's boy or girl, whatever, softball, baseball, volleyball, it's being used in all kinds of sports. And I know I want to talk about traffic here in a little bit, but then how that coach is using it in gamifying it in practices now, to the organization and spitting out analytics, to it being broadcasted on TV. And I know one of the partners that you guys have is 5tool, that I absolutely love. I mean, I think they all do a great job. PBR, PG, 5tool. There's so many great organizations out there, but 5tool has really grabbed a hold of how they can use this technology with the smart coach, where it captures the video. And Dylan works with 5tool. So he was just down there this last weekend, capturing video on his phone, using the smart coach, capturing velocity, sending me text messages like, Dad, there's a freshman over here bumping 90-91, and so, but they're using that technology to validate the velocity readings because it is as accurate. And I've seen a lot of different studies on this. It's as accurate as the stalker guns that I've used. I've sat at elite games, at the area code tryouts, watching guys use different radar guns from different companies. It's as accurate as long as it's all within range of each other. And the thing that I love about 5tool is that they're posting this stuff up on Twitter. So now each kid, it doesn't matter if you're a prospect or not, you're getting your video popped up on Twitter, and coaches get to see all these different actions. It's awesome how really it's been used as an advertisement tool as well.
It delights me to see that the organizations like that and many others are being able to use technology that we created to make it more of a level playing field, right? Get all those kids out there. I mean, that is the coolest thing for me to watch, is that more and more kids that maybe wouldn't have been seen, are able to get out on different platforms, like with Rob Freeman and Flat Ground and other things, where they're starting to say there are ways to get out there using this technology that you don't have if you can't afford maybe the bigger showcases. And it's just this idea of democratizing access to kids is one of the things that just actually makes me delighted that we were able to do this. And it's near and dear to my heart, and I'm sure it is to yours too. So that seeing that happen out there nowadays is great, just across the board with all the technology, honestly, and all the ways that it's getting more affordable for kids.
Hey, Steve, as a fan, Steve, watching the big league games, watching a college game, high school game, years ago, you had a box score board, and it had the runs and the hits and the errors. And then things progressed where, boom, every single pitch was placed out on the video board, 88 miles an hour, 92 miles an hour. And then, of course, it progressed even further. And like Todd said, his dad's doing a broadcast, and there's all these analytics. How is this soft lefty getting anybody out? Well, take a look at his spin rate. His spin rate is off the charts. Or this outfielder just gunned somebody out at third. His arm velocity. So things have progressed. And the question that I was thinking all night, wondering, can he actually answer this? Because when Todd told me you were coming on as a fan, without revealing what's behind the magic curtain, what's next? Where is this going? You know, how can you tease me as a fan? What is next for me?
Yeah, it's gotten, that's a good question, because it has gotten so sophisticated now with all those numbers. They can measure anything on the field. They have, major league stadiums have these Hawkeye systems, which are based on cameras. A lot of cameras and a lot of computation is what they use on those fields now to do all that. But some of the stuff that is possible, and I've seen, is those kinds of technologies eventually will start to, well, they do it already, but they just haven't done the games yet, is and I don't know how they're going to turn it into fan information, but I'll imagine they'll figure something. Is like, say there's a pitcher on the mound, right? And you know how when you're working with a pitcher and you're a pitching coach and you're doing advanced pitch design stuff, and you're having the guy wear like a K vest, or be on a markerless Vicon camera system like they might do in some of these high-end academies, where they're looking at body rotation and they're looking at every detail about the mechanics of the rotation, lower body, upper body. Well, that technology is now just starting to become available, where cameras on a ball field can start to do that with computational horsepower. So you can like have a guy throw a pitch and they could show a graphic on the screen, and they could probably show like his body rotation and make some comparison to, Nolan Ryan or something from some old video where they've extracted it, and say, yeah, this guy's got the same kind of upper body torsional strength as Nolan Ryan. They can do all kinds of insight stuff with body. That's sort of the next horizon, is sort of affordable and sophisticated, camera-based or other system-based things in games, where you can say, an outfielder, maybe that guy that's jumping in the air and making the catch and throwing to first in the air, could be broken down and say something about his body and what he did and how amazing it was compared to others or something. And so you can go deeper and deeper and get into body kinematics. They can do all kinds of aggregated data that I'm sure they'll come up with like other metrics that'll talk about a play. Like maybe, they already seen some of this, where you see the line the outfielder runs to get the catch, how straight is his line to the ball, what arc is he on. They could probably extract a lot more sort of insight data from all that data, making higher level inferences, like and making some statements about compared to so and so, and may even bring up other people or other plays and be able to do side by side on the screen, and show you something compared to some Hall of Famers or some Golden Glove winners. And I think that's coming, to more insight based analytics for more hidden information that would be appealing to fans, right? Things you never know unless they had the software and the systems behind it to analyze it. And then the commentators like Bert will be able to talk about some higher level things, comparing athletes. It might maybe that would open up to your dad more if he started to just get some advanced comparison information that he could talk to more subjectively, but with some data behind it, saying, did you know that, anyway, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting. And I mean, when you talk about kind of the big vision of where that goes, I mentioned it earlier. I mean, baseball is really just adopted, give me more. Whatever you got technology-wise, give me more. I may not be able to know how to use it. And I'm going to say that probably still 70% of college coaches, scouts, your upper echelon of elite coaches that are supposed to kind of be trained in this, still don't really fully understand how to use this. And so when you look at what can, development sensory companies, Pocket Radar, do to help coaches from the little league side to the high school coach. Our high school coach here at Dillon's High School, it loves analytics, loves the sensors. He's going to be using a Pocket Radar device. He knows how to use it. He played college ball. He's not, he's a young guy. And so he wants to implement more metrics into his training regimens. But what programs can be made? And I think that's, a little teaser here. I think that's something that, a company like Pocket Radar, that we're going to be doing to provide more coaches solutions to helping coaches really use this in a way that they can do it every day.
In fact, a small comment on the trends, Dave, like you asked about the future, right? I think in general, with all sports technology efforts out there by all companies, I think that big gap that Todd's alluding to is that only certain coaches can take this tidal wave of numbers and actually turn those numbers into actionable coaching advice. It's a really hard thing to do. It's like, it's like why you have radiologists in the world for medicine, because they're the only people that know how to interpret those MRIs and CAT scans. You need that intermediate data expert that can like turn it into real terms. And I think the technology, I know the technology is headed in a direction where that divide is going to disappear eventually. I think in a few years, you're going to see all coaches at all levels be able to take out their smartphone, and there'll be some kind of magical software and sensor system of some sort that'll basically, instead of making you be the radiologist, it'll just tell you the prescription. It'll just say, hey, that pitcher just needs to actually get a little more, he needs to fire his shoulders a little earlier than his hips, and he's going to get 5 miles an hour more. Go ahead, give that a try, and your phone will watch him do that, and look at the ball speeds and confirm, and that's where it's going to head eventually. Sort of, I call that coach in a box, but our coach assistant, like assistant coach, or maybe it's the expert guy on your staff is now in your phone. You can't afford to hire that person, but he's in your phone, so you can be a high school coach, a little league coach, and have the best coaching knowledge in the world in your hand from the best of the best, but made easy to use. So it's just telling you what to do. You don't have to look at like MRI, MRI scans. You can just say, hey, try this with the kid maybe, or this is what it said. And that's where it's headed, and not too far away, honestly. A few years, you're going to start seeing that.
I think that's absolutely viable. Yeah, Todd and I have talked about that ourselves, and he hates when I give away $1 million ideas, but here's a real world application I was thinking of. I want to share with you. It's yours. You can run with it. I live on a street. There's a lot of kids playing around, and the cars zip a little too fast. So I end up out in my driveway, and I just get people with my hair dryer, because the message we want to put forth today, Steve, is safety first. So if you can improve and combine this with your future technology, I think it would benefit America very well.
You're a straight man for Todd, because that's the segue to the traffic business that we're going to do, because we actually there's this group of retired folks in what's it called, Speedwatch, neighborhood Speedwatch in the UK. They use our low end product, that same $200 product that was the original baseball product, is great for cars. And so there's actually these senior citizens that volunteer at this community Speedwatch group in the UK. And they have clipboards and orange vests. They're sanctioned by the police department. They're in partnership with the police department because they have bad traffic spots, as every urbanized area does. And these people measure velocities and take down license plates on clipboards. And they don't do anything with the cars. They don't do a darn thing. But then they give that data to the police department, and then they send a friendly little letter about, safety is important, and you were observed, no ticket, just you were observed going 20 miles an hour over the speed limit, and we might be looking a little further in the future if that continues. And so it's this public private partnership with public, and that is a very big use of this kind of technology. Our company already is in that in a small way with our products, but not a big way yet. And it's called traffic calming, Dave. And there's a lot, every police department, if you call them up and say, I've got a problem in my neighborhood, they'll give you lots of ideas. They used to lend out the old speed guns they had for citizens, but they didn't have enough equipment and they get broken and lost. So, we can sort of bring that back, but they still have programs that's where you eventually could get like, police officers coming out, or the trailer shows up in your neighborhood to try to calm things down, because the idea is not to write the tickets. The idea is actually to build awareness into the people that live in the neighborhood that they're creating dangerous situations for people. And most people, they found out, the federal government did a study to say that most people, when they know that, the speeds in their neighborhood as a group, almost like how they have neighborhood watch to deter crime in neighborhoods. Same idea, just with awareness and overt effort with signs and other things, you can make the problem go away without having to get confrontational. And that's super powerful. So we're looking at, our technology is beautiful for that. I mean, the stuff we're doing, the stuff we have, and others technology that's out there in the world. There's plenty of tech out there now that can be deployed in a much better way to solve those safety problems for those kids playing in yards. And we all, those of us that are parents, I mean, one of your biggest fears, your kid's going to chase a ball into the street, right? And when they're growing up. And it's a big problem, and I think we're going to be able to help a lot, and so will other companies in that domain. And speed kills, right? I mean, speed really is dangerous in cars. And so yeah, that's coming. And I love your idea of the hair dryer, because people are trained to visualize that. You've actually created a traffic calming program that will work just fine.
And the small benefit is I save a lot on Halloween candy because nobody comes to my house.
You're that guy. Don't go to that house.
That's funny. Well, let's see. So Pocket Radar is helping kids and athletes develop their game, which brings them success and joy in the house. And then now we're saving lives. Steve?
Yeah.
This is awesome. Yeah.
Well, honestly, it's funny. That's the mission of this company. That's the one thing I got to plug into this company. We founded is like, if this is not benefiting people, why the hell would you do a company? You know what I mean? And so, if this company did anything other than benefit people, we wouldn't have founded it. So that was one of the core values of this company. And so any way we can keep doing that in any other way that makes people happier, healthier, achieving their safer, achieving their dreams, achieving their goals, these are all great pursuits. So
well, what I love about it, and it's the approach that you guys took in a really simple way, and you've kept it super simple and easy to use. And now with these coaches solutions and this traffic calming, these programs we'll be launching here, they're going to be simple and easy to use. And it's something that the everyday person doesn't have to have a law degree or a rocket science degree. They can just take it out of a box. Here's your solution-based programs, and here's how it's going to help you guide to their success. So
to take this full circle a bit, Todd, you started the story with the kid story about, how that kid was, unfortunately, because somebody was looking at him wrong with radar, he didn't get to be seen for the true speed he was throwing. Well, as an engineer, as a creator of products, I've got to strive to make our products easier and easier to use. So even if you're a scout or a coach pointing the radar gun wrong, you're not penalizing the kid. So I got to make this. I look at that as a challenge. Like, okay, I got to make the radar more magical so that even if you're tilting it, it beeps at you or something, or does something to say, hey, you're shaving 4 miles an hour off this kid. I mean, in fact, like the guys in the scouting towers that are aiming downward at the thing, they don't know they're shaving 3-4 miles an hour off of every kid's velocity from scouting towers. That's a common thing that happens every day.
Huge misnomer. And I'm glad you brought this up, because we were talking about this off the air, and I wanted to share this story so we can elaborate on this for a few minutes afterwards as well, and how we can maybe help a coach that's listening right now understand a little bit better on how to capture this. But I'm down in South Texas with Dylan. He's playing in this tournament. I got a kid up on the mound throwing I'm using the smart coach. I'm about 110 feet away from the mound, right off the backstop. I'm elevated a little bit, but he's throwing 86, 88, touching 89. I got 5 college coaches about 10 feet to my right. And then I've got the tournament kid that's using the radar device down below me that's sitting on a box of balls. Just, it's on continual mode. And so I asked the coach, because he had pulled out a stalker, and I'm not downplaying any other companies, but he pulls a stalker out, and I said, what do you have him at? He goes, 84. And I said, oh no, you need to come over here and look at him. I said, is that what? And he goes, yeah, no, he's like 83, 84. And I said, no, just come over here for a second. And I pulled out my pocket radar, and I turned it around. It was 87. And he goes, oh. So he comes over, and he knows, because he's used pocket radar, he knows how accurate they are, because it's well known in that college community. So all of a sudden now he's 87. We're match for match, ball to ball, hitting 89. 4 other coaches come over. Now they're the same way. And I said, let's go down here and let's see, if we can just get better readings. And so now I told him, I said, hey, I'm with Pocket Radar. I'm actually certified, just went through a course with Chris Stewart. That was funny. But anyways, we go down. And so now I've got 5 college coaches that are all on this kid. And this kid's pitching good. He's got a good arm. He's got good ball control. He's got good little slider to him. But now we're getting accurate radar readings that these coaches are defining in their head. Okay, 84 is not good enough for me. 87 is. 89 is really good for me at the level that they were representing in their schools. And then I asked the kid that was had the radar, the stalker sitting on the box of balls that was hooked up to a game recording app where you're seeing all the stats, right? And then those metrics go into this kid's player profile, showing what this kid pitched. He had this thing pointed down at the umpire's feet. It wasn't even hitting the umpire. He's hitting 84. I said, can you just angle that up a little bit? 87, 89. So at least they got one inning where he was showing the velocity that he was actually throwing on his player profile form, which gets searched by all those coaches. These 5 guys went over and talked to that kid after the game. Awesome story, but shows you
great story.
You're using it wrong. Like Dylan, I took him to an event and I saw catcher pop time. They're getting his arm velo. He had a good pop time, but the arm velo was down because the guy that was capturing his velocity was standing in between first and second base. How are you supposed to get a catcher's velocity reading when you're standing all the way over here? And so we've learned like cosine and it travels through the radar beam, right? But it was an inaccurate reading. And so that affects Dylan in his search filter.
And this is, to your point, Todd, this is, I've been to thousands of events out there in the world, and that misuse of any radar, it's not just any radar gun that uses the same technology has the same exposure to this issue if you're not using it properly. If you're off to the side or way up high, you're creating it's about creating that angle between the ball flight path and sort of, if you imagine the laser beam coming out the nose of the radar gun or the back of our gun, any angle you create between that ball path and how you're aiming that gun, any angle at all lowers that velocity down. And it's called, and police take 40 hours of training when they use radar guns to give you tickets, because they have to learn all these little, and I wish it were more magic, like I said, on us to figure out ways to make that sort of magically correct itself or something. Because if I'm not a tech person, I would totally believe that if I'm in a scouting tower or off to the right 20 feet, I'm getting a number. Why would that be not right? Right. There's no logic, unless you're a technologist, that would tell you that wouldn't be good. It gave me a number, and I believe the tech because everybody's using the same technology. It's like, so it's not on the people. Honestly, I don't believe it's on the users. It's on the people that have to educate and whoever put the radar gun in their hands and said, your job is to go scout kids or measure kids. It's on that person and that organization to train the people that are holding that gun on how to properly deploy it to give these kids a fair shake. And I know
I think it's really important for people to understand too that gravity takes over, and so you have to understand the range of your device that you're using as well. So if you're not within range,
that's like the other way.
Pocket Radar has an amazing device. It's affordable for everybody. And it captures the exact same velocity reading as your high-end like stalkers and whatnot. But if you're out of range, then when that kid releases that ball, you may not be picking that ball up until halfway to the plate if he's pitching. And so now you're getting maybe 4 or 5 mile an hour off. But if you scoot up and go up against a backstop or get within range, you're right on.
That's the second most common problem is out of range. To make a pocket-sized radar, we had to make a compromise, and that was, we said, okay, you got to be right behind the backstop. You can't be up, 25 rows in the stands behind that. You got to be right there. So our max range is 120. That was a very intentional trade-off, 120 feet from the mound. That was a very intentional trade-off to be able to make it pocket-sized and really affordable, because we figured almost everybody can walk up to the backstop, or get close enough. The bigger guns that are giant, they'll go 300-400 feet away. So you can be way, way back. But all radar guns, you have to be in the working range of the product, and then it'll be accurate. Otherwise, you're going to have those lower velocities again, like Todd said, because people don't, actually, this is really an interesting tidbit. Many people in sports don't understand the fact that the ball slows down after the pitcher's hand releases it. There's a lot of people think that it accelerates with motion somehow. It accelerates and crosses the plate at higher velocity or stays the same. I've had countless coaches tell me that, and it's shocking to me. And a 100-mile-an-hour fastball will drop over 10 miles an hour before it hits the catcher's glove. So it'll hit the catcher's glove at 80, 89, or something like 88. That could drop even 12 miles an hour sometimes, 100-mile-an-hour ball, because that wind resistance is so strong.
Physics.
Yeah, it's physics. And so if you're out of range on your radar gun and, you know, a 100-mile-an-hour pitch halfway to the plate probably has lost at least 6 miles an hour. So if you're out of range, that kid's throwing, you know, 94, not 100.
There's a reason everybody stands in the back of the box.
Yeah, and that's huge to know too, because if as a coach's perspective, or even as a parent, I'm taking my kid out to the batting cage and I'm capturing his barrel speed or exit velocity, right? And how that measures to the kid that he's about to face. Maybe all of a sudden you're facing a kid throwing 94. Well, it's 94 out of the hand, but it's 88 at the plate. So does my son have to be swinging the bat at 94 miles an hour in order to have a chance on this kid? Or can he meet that kid in the middle and be 88 and still have a good at bat? You know, and so that mindset already can either defeat a hitter or encourage a hitter if they knew, oh yeah, no, he's throwing 96, but really it's 90 at the plate. My barrel speed or exit velocity is about 94. I can hit this guy.
Yeah, it's so funny because this is a perfect example. We could probably talk for hours about this. It's so cool. I love this stuff. You know, like those numbers that overwhelm people, like they get all this great tech and they get numbers. You know, it turns out that like to get onto the ball that's a, you know, high velocity pitch at an elite level, it turns out that if you measure the big leaguers, you know, their time to impact, the time that they initiate that muscle, you know, to start swinging the bat to the impact of the ball is like half of the amateurs. It's like 0.1 something, you know, whereas an amateur player would be 0.2. It turns out that's one of the most important numbers for actually being able to read a pitch is that, and that's why elite people are so good. They have another 1/10 of a second to evaluate what they're going to do. That 1/10 of a second is a year to decide, okay, what's that movement on that ball? Where's it going to break? And that extra 1/10 is the entire difference. So, but if you didn't know that kind of thing, that's one example of how if you were measuring that number, time to impact off some bat sensor or some other tech, you know, not knowing the details of all that it plays together is another great example of how you can use a piece of information to know what you got to develop, what you got to work on. And that's what I hope to see in the future is how these numbers can, and how this use of this equipment, like you said, can be known more and make it simpler to use. So this tilting that we're talking about in the outer range, you know, I hope our future stuff will be able to help people automatically, either by fixing it automatically or by maybe telling them somehow, you know, like you're aiming, you have an aiming problem or you're out of range or some, I don't know how, I haven't even thought of the answers yet, but you know, it's got to go that way.
Sounds like, yeah. Sorry, Todd. It sounds like there's almost 2 levels of education here. One is the use of the product with the tilting and the distance. Mm-hmm. And Todd, you said you were certified. So obviously there's avenues out there where people can learn. Hey, there he is.
There you go.
Certification.
There you go.
The basics of radar.
Yep.
But the second part, and I'll use Todd as a funny example. The second part of the education is human nature, because even if a scout like Todd understands the technology, he still may be lazy. He still may be in conversation with a buddy up in a tower, and he doesn't just want to get up and go down the steps. He might be in the air conditioning. And now if I'm in Texas, I got to get out in the 110-degree heat. Well, I'm getting a good enough reading right here, right where I am. So, you know, mom and dad in their lawn chair at an angle. Sometimes, you know, there's education with the product, and then there's education of the laziness of human nature.
Very true. Very true. One of the things I saw at an unnamed showcase that was a high-end showcase, there was their employees, their interns that were hired to take the readings manually with soccer guns. They had the laziness things when we think they put the handle of the soccer gun in the cup holder, you know, in the seating behind the backstop. They're in the right position, but they shoved it in the cup holder with a napkin, and it was drooping down like this just because it's sort of slumping downward. And they were shaving 3 or 4 miles an hour after every kid. And I'm like, I had to tap the guy, and I'm like, you know, I had to just sort of educate the guy. I just couldn't let him just do that. He's writing down charting all these pitches. It's going to go in the kid's profile for an event that cost their parents a lot of money, I'm sure, you know, and is published. And that poor kid looks like a nothing when he could be something, just because there's someone did not hold that. Well, I don't blame him. It's a 2-pound gun. Why do you want to hold that?
Yeah.
Put it.
When I was scouting, doing pro coverage at big league stadiums or even minor league stadiums, you'd wedge it right in between the seats. A lot of times you would try to get
nothing wrong with that, as long as you want to aim it right.
Well, but then you talk about the area code games in Long Beach. I mean, back when, that Blair Field, and you'd have 300, 500 scouts, coaches, all huddled around home plate, curving around first and third. We'd be 20 feet off from home.
Wow.
And, we got, but it's not just me, there's 300 guns. So as soon as that kid would come up to throw, everybody would raise their guns, and you just see this wave of radar guns spanning across. But now I think about what I know about radar and how easy it was when, I think it was you, Steve, or maybe Chris, just said, you got to think of it like a flashlight. Yeah. It's got a 5-foot beam. And as long as that ball is traveling down that light beam as long as possible, you're getting the most accurate reading.
That's right.
If that's not traveling down that beam, then you need to put yourself, like Dave, you just said, you need to put yourself into position to capture the right reading. And at the end of it, really, what does that reading mean to me as a scout? It could mean my job. What does it mean to me as a coach? It could mean me creating the proper development program for that athlete to get better. What does it mean for me as a parent to understand where my kid is and to give him proper guidance, encouragement, pat him on the back when he does something great? And what does it mean for me as an athlete? It means that I know where I'm at and how hard I need to work to get to where I need to go. Or, hey, you know what? Maybe it's just not going to happen for me, and I need to have some fun with this right now. And I need to, start thinking about what's next.
Yeah.
So really, it's 4 different mentalities.
No, it's so true. It's so true, and it's about knowledge. At the end of the day, it's really about knowledge, and how do you get that knowledge? Either get that knowledge where it needs to go, or, like I said, I'm always biased as technology. Build better technology that doesn't require so much knowledge, and it just becomes self-evident. I mean, that to me, that's the hallmark of great technology for the consumer is, when it is just magic and it does what you expect it to do. It's almost like on us to say, if I wanted to work at an angle pointing downward, well, then it's up to you, engineer, to go figure out how to make it work when it's at an angle. Don't tell me I have to aim it like a flashlight beam. I'm not going to remember that.
Yeah, that's true. Steve, thank you so much for being on. Dave, you can see why I love this brand, love the company, love working with these guys, just people.
Well, I think I love doing this kind of stuff, Todd. So, to me, this is really about sharing information and knowledge and spreading around good stuff. So, I'll come on to any interview or podcast where I can help educate folks or have fun. Honestly, I like doing this too. So, thanks again for having me on.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Dave, you got any last comments?
Yeah, I just thought, I need you to do this, Steve, because when my wife is late, she takes a long time getting ready in the morning. I will have radar. She's moving slow. Let's go. Pick it up.
There's a product idea.
There we go.
Microwave oven hairdryer, right?
Great meeting you, Steve.
Yeah.
You too, Dave.
All right, everybody. You guys be safe. Enjoy your week. And Steve, thanks again for being on. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, y'all.